Welcome to the Expat Property Portfolio. I am your host, Callum Williamson, and today we are joined by John Treacy from Centrick Invest. John has been an expat for coming up for 18 years now. A large part of that was in Hong Kong. He's been working in property for all of that time, so he's seen a lot of change. We talk about some of that change from investing in the UK being very London-centric to it now being Northern Powerhouse-centric, and then sort of progressing on from UK property into other areas we've looked at, namely Bali and Phuket. We've actually also got a webinar with John tomorrow where we're talking specifically about Phuket property. So if you'd like to sign up to that and find out more after listening to this podcast, then the link to do so is down below. Anyway, let's jump in and I hope you enjoy. So where are you? Whereabouts are you today?
I'm in Phuket, mate. I mean, sunny for once this week. It's sunny Surin, mate. So yeah, near to Bangtao, if you know it. So yeah, it's where I live until my place is built next year.
Thanks very much for coming on the pod. Why don't we start with a bit of your background in terms of how you became an expat and sort of your story up to where we are now, if that's okay.
Yeah, hi, Callum. Thanks for having me today. Yeah, so I've been an expat in Asia for nearly 18 years. So I left. I'm from sunny near Birmingham, Wolverhampton. Left there in March '08, working in marketing. And a good friend of mine who's still in Hong Kong was working in wealth management, and he introduced me to a property company. At the time, I wasn't actually that sure where Hong Kong was. Believe it or not, I've been as far as Dubai and Abu Dhabi to see him. He left the UK at like 20. He's the go-getter, and he's got a very senior position these days. I won't name him, but he's doing pretty well. And I joined a property company and went from there. So yes, 18 years in Asia, Hong Kong primarily, which has been home. So yeah, it's been quite a journey regards to property. I've worked in property all that time. So, I got there in March '08. So anyone who remembers that time, that we had 6 months of a crazy bull market and then
Yeah.
GFC. So GFC was so interesting in Hong Kong. Nothing got sold or bought for 3 to 6 months. But those that stuck around then had very, very strong careers because London became distressed after that. So yeah, I've seen quite a few cycles. COVID, GFC was the most interesting one regards to shock to the system. But yeah, we can touch on that if we want to later on.
I was going to say, which was I didn't see Hong Kong in GFC, but I was there sort of 2019 November when you had the riots and all of that sort of stuff. And we were trying to get to meetings down, one of the main roads in Central,
Yeah.
and it was full of riot police. And then obviously a few months later was COVID. So what was the worst in terms of it sort of being the quietest out of GFC and COVID?
I think GFC. So what that just came as a shock. I remember, I worked for a company who had 10 sales guys, and we were really strong sales machine at the time. And we weren't doing typical markets. We're doing sort of Vietnam, Malaysia, these kind of markets because they realised that the UK was at the top of its market. Post GFC, so September '08, nothing really got sold until February, which 5 months without any sales in a big machine is quite hard. Then London opportunities became real distressed London opportunities, and they were around for 6, 12 months. And I remember meeting a client who was a director at JP Morgan, who used to live around the corner. It was in Hoxton. It's right next to Jamie Oliver's 15 restaurant. It was built, completed, and he bought a one bed for 250. But he was literally shaking when he gave me the reservation form because he wasn't sure of his position. The whole banking system was being questioned at that point. So he bought something at 250, had the leap of faith. It basically is like, worst case, I'll live in it, which is not normally a way that we work on property. It's purely investment. But I was like, okay. And then now that property's worth like 700, 800,000 pounds. So, but that was the worst. That was the unknown. COVID was actually really strong. We did lots and lots of sales in COVID.
Yeah.
The protests were challenging. Hong Kong had a few years, but it seems to be coming out of it now to an extent with a new stadium and this kind of thing and positivity. But Hong Kong had 3 or 4 years of real pain because COVID lasted longer than anywhere else in the world, in China and Hong
Yeah.
Kong. And those protests, I remember being near Causeway Bay one day and I saw what was 1 million people walk past, with just
Yeah.
pepper spray being around 1 million people. That's like 1/7, 1/8 of the population. That's how big a thing it was. So it was
Yeah.
pretty scary at the time.
Crazy. Yeah, it was I remember, yeah, with the riot people, it was pretty scary. Sorry to interrupt, but if you're enjoying this piece of content and would like to find out more, about buying property and our key 10 steps to doing so, then pop your details in the link below somewhere and grab a copy of our book, 10 Steps to 10K, the Expat Property Playbook. Enjoy. Two things I would like to have a chat about today. Firstly is sort of the UK side, and sort of it would be good to pick your brains a bit on some of the trends you might have seen over 18 years in property, because I guess it has, from maybe being more London centric to more sort of Northern powerhouse centric. So a bit on that, and then a bit on maybe, you've been an expat 18 years, I've been an expat 11 years now, and people tend to go one of two ways, don't they? They come for 2 years, maybe three, and then they go back, or they come for 2 years and 25 years later they're still here. So that then becomes a discussion around, well, how can I stay in Asia and where am I going to retire? And I think we've both got similar ideas on that. So
Yeah, 100%. They used to say in Hong Kong it was 2 or 20, basically a 2 or 20 rule. And
really,
then yeah, there's guys who are way past 20 now, and I remember getting there for the first year. It's very hard because I didn't have that much experience in property, and you always need a story about your background and that kind of thing. And to be 6 to 12 months in always felt like you're a newbie. But once you get to sort of 12 months, you kind of, you're accepted, you live in there and whatnot, playing sport, rugby and things like that. You meet expats. And I think about expat life is everyone's been in the same position.
yeah,
Generally, expats are very open. Look, if you're playing a sport like rugby, cricket, whatever, then you join a group and you've got 40 mates the first weekend you play
yeah,
rugby, because everyone's like, oh, welcome, you play rugby, see you Tuesday, and then whatever. So yeah, that's been a really good thing about expats, how open and how people are willing to accommodate. And that's the same spending more time in Phuket, which we'll come on to. But yeah, regards to property, when we after the GFC, it was London or nothing. I mean, I've been in many presentations over the years, not primarily Singapore, where when I remember talking about Birmingham in 2015 for the first time, and it was
people,
like it's
uh,
London or nothing, was literally don't talk to us about anything else. And some people still have that opinion, but for many years we were selling mainly London. I remember we were doing Zone 2 London, Islington for years, and it was like 300k one bed, 400k two bed, 10 minutes into the city. Great example, 75% bank lending. But now you're looking at 600k. You look at, and the stamp duty attached to that level of purchase is significant. I had a client a few years ago who only wanted London. They bought on London Bridge 1.1 million, and they paid £80,000 a stamp for the privilege of buying. Now, if you'd have bought 3 or 4 London, Birmingham's or Manchester's instead, it would be about half that in stamp because of the tiers. So,
yeah,
so yeah, I saw a seismic shift, and kind of I was at the front of it for Birmingham in 2015, working for one of Birmingham's biggest developers at the time, Seven Capital. We took a stole a march on that, but we had to educate and educate and educate. The talk of HS2 was all a pipe dream. The talk of banks moving there was just a pipe dream. These things are now. I remember having one of my slides saying, "Rumor has it Goldman Sachs are coming to Birmingham," and people like laugh. It happened. 300 or 400 people working there in Birmingham now. I've got mates I went to school with who are earning London money in Birmingham. So that shift has taken place. Whereas it was all London. Now I'd say what we do at Centrick on the investment side, and I know you guys do a similar amount. I'd say 80% of our UK business, maybe 90, is non-London. We do have some
yeah.
clients who buy it because that's what they know. They want a pad there perhaps, but for pure investment, it's Birmingham, Manchester, Reading, East Midlands basically now, which is lower price point and with a really strong story. So that's shifted completely.
Yeah, it has totally changed when you speak to people about investment now. As you say, it used to be, London, 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 and now you barely ever hear London. And I think as well that, especially with the sort of the interest rates going up in, when was that, 2022 or 2023, it's
Yeah.
quite difficult if you're trying to buy something that will wash its face and pay itself off, unless you're putting in, I don't know, 40, 50% in London, and then you need 250 grand plus the stamp. It's not really a viable sort of hands-off buy to let, is it?
It was fine because 2010 to 2015, it basically went up double digit growth every year. So if you weren't making money, you on a cash flow on a monthly basis, you're making so much on capital growth.
Yeah,
But without that, when you look at the Savills reports that we're just talking about, Savills reports, London is always the lowest of the regions for growth. So you're going to lowest yield and the lowest growth potential. There's going to be pockets, of course, within there that you might find some gems. But if you're a pure investor, and it's just about the numbers, as we always say. then you're going to be back in a Manchester or Birmingham or a Leicester, for instance, which is 20-25% growth in 5 years, and the yield is going to wash its face. So it doesn't make sense for London unless it's a trophy asset stroke a home for me right now.
And he actually, it was interesting. Lucian was talking about it. We were talking about property cycles, and I asked him if he knew about if he was talking about the 18-year property cycle. And he sort of laughed at me. He was like, "No, we don't believe in that, but we do believe in cycles." And he says that according to their research and what they've seen, London always leads a cycle for say 5 years, and then the rest of the cycle, two more lots of fives will always be elsewhere. So he was sort of thinking that London may come back at some point over the next few years and may have another run.
To be honest, if that's the case. Happy days. I mean, we all love London. I mean, it's one of the best cities in the world. So if it makes sense, and it makes sense, right? But we're discerning where we invest. It's just about the numbers and the research, right?
Well, what are you guys, where are you seeing as obviously you've got Birmingham and that's grown quite a lot. Same with Manchester. If someone doesn't want to pay, used to be London prices, but if someone doesn't want to pay Birmingham or Manchester prices now, where can they get that sort of next decent deal?
I think the most popular for this year, looking at the numbers this year for us, our most popular result has been Reading. To be honest, it's not, it's similar. We had a scheme called RG1, and we've still got a couple of units left. I know you guys have worked with us very closely on that. That sort of ticked the London box about being London. We
Yeah,
had one beds in there at 230K, which is Birmingham, Manchester. Manchester's probably a bit more expensive than that for a one bed. But, obviously very much an investor size apartment of 450 square feet, good enough. But 4 minute walk to the station and 20 minutes into zone one, into Paddington, that's hit the spot. So it's kind of like people want to be around London, but they don't want to kind of pay the prices. So Reading, and we're looking for more Reading stock. We're looking for two or three more developments in the next 12 months
yeah,
there, because with the tech jobs, Apple, Microsoft, there's jobs there in Reading, but you're just a stone's throw. Now, the yield percentages on that Reading project are more like 6 to 7% on a normal AST 12-month lease, whereas you're looking at 5 to 6 for Birmingham and Manchester. So that's been the star of the show this year. I'm always bullish on Birmingham. Manchester always does well. Birmingham, I think there's a second wave for Birmingham. As I mentioned before, we got into Birmingham super early, before a lot of these things were confirmed. HS2 is happening. And the analogy I gave for HS2 versus Hong Kong is, I remember when Kennedy Town, which is a super popular area of Hong Kong, used to have no MTR station, and it was talked about, and there's a bit of a buzz. People were buying into something like the Merton, which is a really popular project there, and then the work goes and you forget about it. And then one day there's an announcement, MTR station is now open and you can actually do the commute. And then people actually go, oh wow, I could buy there, I can actually live there and commute there. And then it kicks on. So I think what you're
yeah,
going to see with HS2 is you've seen all that kind of buzz, and there's still a bit of a buzz about it. But if people see a HS2 article now, seen it all before, right?
yeah,
If once that opens or is close to opening, you're going to see that kick on. And that, being from Birmingham or nearby and done that commute many, many times, the fastest time I've done it is an hour and 40 with Virgin. That's going to be halved. That is just going to be a game changer. And I think people kind of forgetting about that now. I mean, whenever it
yeah.
completes, that will just kick the market on for Birmingham again. So I think if you're looking long term, Birmingham still represents very good value.
I never thought about that actually. That's a good analogy. Is actually, yeah, once people actually see that it's real and see that it is going to happen rather than this thing that's been changing and coming and going for so long, that yeah, you will get even more people move there. What about overseas buying locations then? So I've been speaking with clients recently who maybe have a few in the UK, same as myself, and then you sort of look at, okay, where can we go next? Where can we diversify into? And he actually sent me a ChatGTP screenshot. He asked ChatGTP and it said Turkey, Portugal, Manila, and somewhere else. And I went back to him and sort of said, well, these are the reasons why, and or why I would and would not buy in those locations. But overseas, yeah, why, do you think there are good overseas locations, and what are the sorts of reasons you would be buying overseas?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, a similar conversation. We're probably having the same sort of conversations. I've got people who've got 10 properties with me over the last 10 years plus, and they're going, what else is there? Especially post-COVID, there's that sort of, I think more people looking at early retirement or options to early retire, or retire to an extent on their terms, maybe consult and whatever else. So dealing with so many clients in Asia and Hong Kong and Singapore primarily, a common question I ask people, which will answer your question eventually, is where you're going to retire to. And it used to be I might retire back to the UK, and because Hong Kong and Singapore is just not an option for 99% of expats, because unless you own your own home, to have a pension and not own your own home, the biggest drain of your income is going to be rent, and in Hong
Yeah,
Kong, which is astronomical. So very few expats I know own in Hong Kong just because of how expensive it is, entry costs and things like that. So that's not becoming an option. But people are now beginning to say to me, not the UK, and that's way more prevalent. Maybe it's the people I know and the 20 years plus gang, but I say, okay, where? And Thailand comes up. And I'm this morning in sunny Phuket. I now split my time between Hong Kong, Singapore, and Phuket, because I can do my job. I can do video calls, conferences from here. Phuket Airport works, and the property market. You can buy a really nice two bed with a premier developer who's Singapore listed for circa £300,000 and pay over 8 years.
yeah,
So it kind of gets people's attention. And when I speak to clients who've got one, two, three properties in the UK, they go, okay, let's have a look, because it could be a foothold to their retirement vehicle. It might not be their end game, their retirement dream, but they're going to get some investment and be in the market, because there's a lot happening in Phuket, just like a HS2 sort of thing with infrastructure potential, which will kick on the prices in the next few years.
yeah, yeah. I think that's it. I think you touched on a couple of the points there. I think one of the easy things about buying in the UK is the security, the track record, the law, all of this sort of stuff. When it comes to looking at these overseas locations that say we're focusing on Asia, it can be quite murky. Like I was looking at Lombok in Indonesia because you can buy and build a villa for 250,000 US, but you can never own the land. And after 90 years, you've got to give it back. And I'm not going to live for another 90 years, but still. And then you've got a
Right.
question over nowadays, maybe,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's true. And then you've got a question over the quality of the developer, because anytime you go on holiday to these parts of Asia, you'll drive past unfinished buildings and projects that started and didn't finish. So I think you've got to be super secure, and that sort of leads on to the Phuket thing because you've got, as you say, you've got Banyan Tree. There are other developers, but Singapore listed Banyan Tree, five-star hotels, 80 plus of them around the world. So a good build quality and a good track record. And now you can buy a freehold. Was that always the case in Thailand that you could have a freehold as a foreigner?
For condominiums, which we call apartments, yes. So the building has to be 51% owned by Thais, but Banyan Tree, they pre-select which ones are for foreigners, for foreign ownership, or which ones are for leasehold. So yeah, it just makes it super comfortable. If I've met many clients, and they go, oh, they didn't know they couldn't buy freehold, and you can. They didn't know, there's developers out there like Banyan Tree. It's actually 93 hotels, nearly going to be 100 by the end of the year. Hotels, Singapore listed, Thai listed, and they do payment plans, which are post completion. So we always use leverage where we can with clients. I mean, some clients buy cash, but to have a little bit of leverage, even if it's developer finance, does help to sort of make it more palatable and to see some income versus return.
Yeah, yeah, because I know when I was looking at, buying Phuket, and originally it was as a sort of a lifestyle factor, as somewhere you could go and sort of, as you say, you don't need to be in the office all the time now. You don't need to be traveling, meeting clients. You can do Zooms and stuff. And I thought it would be a nice place to live. But sort of digging down into it more, and the more I went through the process, the more you realize actually it is, I think, an incredibly solid investment location as well. One of the best, I think, in Asia, or maybe even the world. Maybe I'm biased, but I think it's that good.
Yeah, look, I think for me, look, I happen to be in Phuket. But it has to work for me with travel because, I'm not on the plane as much as you, I don't think, these days, but I need to be in Hong Kong once a month for a week. I need to be in Singapore a couple of times a month. KL, this business for us there. The airport has to work, and the airport does work. If I compare it to, say, Samui, this might be one flight every other day to Hong Kong or Singapore. So, you're an hour and 20 minutes to Singapore, you're 3 hours to Hong Kong, you're an hour to KL. So it does work. And now putting more money into the airport. It's nice, it's clean, it works, and from the area where Banyan Tree is, I mean, I've bought into it, and I know you have. It's like there's a back entrance to the airport which can take 20 minutes, so it really does work on that basis. So if that didn't work, I wouldn't be here. So that fits in. But the cost of living, talking expat things, is way, way less, than Hong Kong. I mean, your biggest drain in Hong Kong, if you don't own, is your rent, that's, and Singapore. But I hate to be the guy that goes, how much, but like you go to a
Yeah.
coffee shop. I remember going to Singapore recently and got two with my wife, two cappuccinos, two bagels, and it was like 40 Sing dollars. And I was like, that's
That
30
is mad.
quid, £30,
Yeah.
right? And into a nice artisanal place in the most expensive area of Phuket, you're talking a third of the price.
Yeah.
So, the cost of living is much less, and and it's better for you. If you are looking, I know not everyone can do what I'm doing in regards to being remote and things like that. But people who are, it's a serious consideration. Of some of our mutual clients, we've sold some property with Banyan Tree, who are people who own recruitment companies in Singapore. They want to be
Yeah.
there 2 weeks, 2 weeks in Singapore. This digital nomad thing is big, and Thailand is offering help with that. And then
Yeah.
some of the things I'm seeing about infrastructure, F1 tracks. I mean, not all of it's going to come true. There's like an F1 track being promoted this week, like in an island with this casinos coming. There's a lot happening. It works now, so anything else is the icing on the cake. But cost of living's great. Um, Actual accessibility to get around Asia is fantastic, and you can own. And for 3 million Hong Kong dollars, £300,000, you can get a really nice two bed near a golf course, and you can pay it off over 8 years. So for some people to go, right, I want to come and take a look, and that's how we work.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, yeah, it's an interesting one, Phuket. I remember I first went, I think, on a family holiday when I was 10 years old. So, 20 something odd years ago now. And I even remember back then, it was popular. It was a popular tourist destination, but it's just been getting more and more and more popular. And you sort of like when I go and look at properties to buy myself, I like to go and have a walk around and get a feel from the place. And as soon as you get off the plane and you go to the airport, you look at the arrivals and the departure board, and you've got, Frankfurt, London, Melbourne, Sydney, Dubai, Qatar, Hong Kong, all the world's biggest cities are flying direct into Phuket. And you hear it when you walk around, accents from everywhere in the world.
60 countries with direct flights to Phuket. So, yeah, I remember when those big, when those peak season, when those A380s land. Obviously, there's immigration gets a bit busy, but if you're a Thai resident, you can get fast track, which helps. Any questions on that, let me know. But yeah, those big three A380s. I think they've got two or three flights a day.
Oh,
Middle East, Saudi direct. There's flights from Oman now, which going back. I always look at ways back to the UK and Oman or Qatar, and then going to
yeah,
Birmingham that way. It's
yeah.
yeah, the big serious airlines that are coming in.
Yeah, and it feels like it's shifting from what used to be a pure tourism thing to now this more like with the DTV, the Destination Thailand 5-year digital nomad visa, the retirement visas. It's like they're opening it up to not just tourists, but people that want to be based there and run businesses from there. And I think as
Yeah.
well, something that people don't realize is in terms of somewhere to retire, the level of healthcare, private healthcare in Thailand, cheap as chips.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, basically, I'm in Hong Kong, Asia. My brother's, I'm going to his wedding on Sunday. He lives in Perth, further away.
Oh,
So my
cool.
mom, yeah, he's the most remote city in the world, I think, Perth. But again, I'm flying from Phuket on Sunday, direct to Perth, 6-hour flight, which I didn't even know that was going to be a thing. I thought I might have to go to Singapore. But my mom, she's looking at taking a place in Banyan to live 6 months of the year and then the rest in the UK when the weather's better. Big consideration for her was safety. And obviously Banyan's completely secure and crime is pretty low especially compared to the UK these days. But healthcare is massive, mate. Like BDMS Bangkok Hospital is one of the best hospitals in Asia. They've got BDMS wellness clinics. And you're right, the cost of operations, cost of dental is, probably a fifth of the cost of Hong Kong for dental. A
Yeah,
general checkup is probably 100 quid. I had a root canal and it was about £200, which in Hong Kong is about £1,500.
yeah.
So, and they're just as good. You go to the right ones, they're just as good. So medical care is a huge thing, and especially more of a consideration if you get elderly. A lot of people in my position, like being on the nomad remote worker side, we get medical cover, and it's for Asia, so Hong Kong, Singapore, I can use it in Thailand as well. So
And what about then so I think there's strong cases, Phuket, Banyan Tree, let's talk about Banyan specifically because we're both big fans, is, the lifestyle side, but then the pure investment side. So I was chatting with a client yesterday and we were sort of trying to pick out different units and different sites with different sort of features and benefits based on something being somewhere you would live and a pure buy to let. So I say, let's leave out the place to live now because that's very personal, isn't it? Do you want a view of this, that, the other, etc. From a pure investment perspective, what would you say makes, if you're looking to buy something that is going to be mainly an investment, but then you might use 2 weeks for your
yeah.
summer holiday or whatever it is, is it one bed, two bed? Is it on the golf course? What's sort of the defining factors that you're seeing?
Yeah, and this is a really common question and scenario for my clients and our clients. So for most people, Banyan Tree, if you look at what they've probably got 18 projects live right now in regards to condominiums and things like that. Some will go up to 10 million dollars, which is
Which
trophy
ones are
asset.
those?
This one's called Mazu on the beach, which are villas on the beach, right? So they've actually I had a client inquire the other day, and he's like, "No, we've sold five, we're keeping the other six because we're going to put the prices up 100% in a year's time." They're just trophy
Bloody
assets, right?
hell.
That's we focus on investment grade. What I mean by investment grade is I've got projects which are nice, but we sold quite a lot last year on the golf course, which is sold out now, which were smaller apartments, and they looked on the golf course. They would be perfect for long-term and short-term rentals. What we're looking at a 7 to 8% net yield on these ones, and not all of those are going to happen. Obviously, the higher price point, the yield tends to compress. So we focus on those which put investment grade. So our sweet spot is between 8 to 15 million baht, which 8 million baht is about 180k sterling. And obviously there is payment plans to spread it out, but that's the initial price point, which is going to get about £2,000 a month income, which is considerable. So a two bed in a 300k two bed and I did this for a client the other day who was bought in Birmingham happily and very happy with their property in Birmingham. A two bed in Birmingham at 300k pounds is going to yield at about 1,200 to 1,300 pounds a month. Yeah, gross. In Phuket with Banyan Tree, it's going to be about £2,000 a month. But if you're buying Birmingham, and lots of clients have done both, you're not going to be using Birmingham for 4 weeks of the year yourself. So what you can
Yeah.
do with Banyan Tree is this hybrid approach. So you can do a long-term rental, a short-term rental, and use it yourself. So you could just do a 12-month lease, forget about it, that's fine, perfectly fine. But what a lot of clients want to do is use it a bit at the time of the year. Now the peak season is generally between October till April. That's when the weather's perfect. The whole world comes to Phuket. January is the biggest month of the year for tourists, post Chinese New Year, Europeans coming over for winter sun, all that kind of thing. So you're going to get probably 3 times your monthly rental. So what some people are doing with a strategy with us is the off season do a long term rental, 6 month lease. Banyan will look after that for you, and then you do a hybrid of short term lets. With that peak season, where you might be getting on a two bed, £200-300 a night on one of these investment grade units,
Yeah.
and then you can say, right, it's my wife's birthday in December, we're going to use it for a week. It's Chinese New Year, let's use it for a week ourselves, and you block out those weeks yourself. So you get to benefit of using your property that your hard earned money and use it, but you're also getting that sort of magnified yield within the peak season and that
Yeah.
guaranteed yield. So you've got that kind of hybrid approach, which is completely refreshing and different to how a UK property might look.
So one of the things that sort of gave me confidence, specifically the Laguna area, Bangtao Beach, is we've got some long-term clients that have been living there for about 15 years, and they run shipping. They make stuff in China basically, and you speak to them and you say, "I'm trying to build this. Can you do it?" And they'll build it with their factories and ship it out. And So they sort of fly in, fly out, and we'll do 3 weeks in China and then back to Phuket for a month. And I asked them, I think last year or the year before, what is the market like? And they all live there, but it turns out they've been sort of buying secondhand villas and doing them up in the area for years and years and years. And they said it's just gone from strength to strength. And that comes on to the next point is, a lot of people I've been speaking to have been sort of saying, well, when the war in Ukraine is over, all the Russians will leave and the demand will drop, etc. So how sustainable do you think the sort of continued growth in prices and demand is in Phuket? I mean, I know what I think, but I'd be interested to hear what you think.
Yeah, there was a report that came out by Colliers last week, actually, which talked about inventory. I think there's 4,000 units in Phuket that are unsold right now. Banyan Tree, as a comparison, which was amongst that, have got a 98% sold of their completed stock. So that some developers build it and they can't sell it and whatever else. So banyan trees all get sold. So I think what you're seeing is, I mean, I heard banyan tree when I first got to Hong Kong from colleagues or my parents bought in Banyan in Laguna. And locals in Thailand actually call Bang Tao Beach Laguna Beach because of how prevalent they are.
Really?
I think there's two different things. There's condominiums that are outside of Laguna and Banyan Tree, and then there's Banyan Tree and Laguna itself. I think you've got to be very discerning if you're buying outside of Laguna because it might, in the modern age of where social media can be so good, a new developer might look the best developer in the world, but they've got no track record. And when people come down to stay for 2 nights, because we offer this 2-night viewing trip with for clients, I point out to people that's Alamander, that's 30 years old. What do you think? It looks spotless. And I say to clients, what's the project going to look like in 2, 5, 10, 20, 30 years time? And Banyan Tree have got that track record. Now, we do business in Singapore, you do business in Singapore. We know what Singapore's like. It's right, proper, and it's done well.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's frustrations perhaps, but they do everything well. This is Singapore company. They're not putting their name to something and letting it die. And if you when you come to see the projects, you see a 30-year-old project still looking pristine because they've got a sinking fund, a bit of money that looks after it, upgrades it. Then you go, all right, this is a proper developer. And I hate to say it, you see stuff that's a drive past and it's 2 years old, and you go, it looks tired already, and nothing's
Yeah.
being done to it. So to answer your question, supply is very tight within Banyan Tree and Laguna. Look, I think there's going to be some people leave, some people come. I think, there's so many people on these sort of digital nomad visas and people like you mentioned China. I mean, I flew directly to Shanghai twice last year from Phuket. There is the people going, right, I can do this job remotely. So I think if anyone leaves, they'll be replaced. I think it's becoming super attractive to people to move to for many reasons that we've touched on.
Yeah, I think so. And I think seeing is believing. And I know that's a bit cheesy, but
That's my
when I
favorite strap line.
it's when I went and had a look around it, it's absolutely amazing. And I likened it to sort of the other day I was chatting to someone, they're like, oh well, it's a bit expensive. And the best comparison I could think of was like the Palm in Dubai. It's a
Yeah,
limited land supply. It's the prime area of a prime area, and it's where everyone wants to be. And I had the same thing when I was shown around by one of the nice ladies in the showroom. I pointed to one of the 5 or 6 bedroom villas on the golf course that looks good. I mean, I thought they were new, and I said to her, how old are they? And they were 20 years old, and they look
yeah.
fantastic still. So I think you have got to see it, and I think, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think people will be leaving. I think it's going to get more and more popular. And the other thing I think we haven't talked about is the other sort of clientele it attracts is the sort of health and wellness type people,
Oh,
because it's massive for the professional UFC fighters, people doing fight camps, people that want to sort of go and train and look after themselves. You walk around Phuket and, it's full of these sorts of people. So I think, yeah, it's a cracking place
it's
to be, I think.
it's infectious. Look, I lived in Hong Kong, and Hong Kong is one of the best cities in the world for a number of years. And if you get into it, you've got you've got the hiking and all that kind of thing. But at the same time, it can be draining. I remember going to Australia 12, 13 years ago. It's infectious. I think you're in Australia, right? It's infectious how people
Yeah,
are outdoorsy and people
yeah,
jump on the bike and they run to work and they take a shower at work. Where things in like Hong Kong, it's not geared up for that. You know, you haven't got showers at work and things like that, which obviously you need in a hot country. But it's kind of infectious here, like the whole sort of thing. You know, one of my favourite things to do these days is to go to a sauna ice bath. There's one in Bangtan.
Oh,
Just do an
me
hour.
too.
Seven,
Yeah.
£70 for the month. It's like pristine. You can take your laptop, and it's just great. You know, you feel good afterwards. And there's more and more of those open. I saw one that's by those guys that only John Jones was here last week, famous UFC guy.
Cool.
They've got all these high rocks gyms and all that kind of
Yeah.
thing. So it's getting, you know, the fitness and the health thing is absolutely huge. And I think Phuket is seen as one of the pioneers of Asia, stroke the world, right?
That was one of the things that's, strange, the things that you make your decisions on. But if it's for you and it's a heart purchase, then that's what counts. And might have even been to the same gym. I went to this gym just outside the front of Laguna. I think it was down to the left,
Yeah.
and it was
Gym
10.
fit, yeah.
Yeah, and you've got one huge sort of machines and cardio room on the right, and then on the
Weights on
left
the
you've
left.
got
Yeah.
you've got 6 or 7 squat racks, you've got turf for pushing sleds, you've got free weights up to more than you would ever need, and then out the back you've got a pool, an ice plunge, a sauna, a steam room, and then an even colder ice plunge. And for a one-off session, it was 10 quid, and for the month, it was still super reasonable. And I thought that is just cracking, isn't it? I mean, anyway, we should do a fitness and health and lifestyle podcast instead of a
But
property
mate,
podcast. But
well, yeah. I mean, I was just checking in this one. I think I lost £20 in the last £23
oh,
in the
no
last
way,
3 months. Yeah, yeah.
that's mad. Well done.
Yeah. Thanks, mate. And that wouldn't have happened in Hong Kong. I just know it wouldn't
Yeah,
happen. You know, I've tried before, and it's just just get up. You know, when the thing about Phuket, if it's raining, it's just you just gotta have a plan B in place. What you're gonna do? That's it's not a big city like that. But most of the time, there is elements of the day. It's sunny, get out, and there's nothing better than walking, whatever you're into, weights, whatever, and just it's a good place, and it's good for the soul, I'd suggest.
yeah, I agree. Okay, anything else you'd like to talk about on Phuket or UK or property in general?
Look, I think we take the same approach. I think it's all about the numbers. It's all about a balanced portfolio. If you haven't got one in the UK already, getting something in the UK makes a huge amount of sense. We're probably still 70% focused on the UK. For people who've got things in place and they want a stepping stone to retirement, I think Phuket is a serious consideration. I've looked at Bali. I've got friends who left from Hong Kong to go to Bali instead of Phuket. And every single mate of mine that goes to Bali gets the Bali belly. I mean, that's just the first thing you get, an entry. So it's a completely different market, and it's the right thing for some people, and the right, I think taking a look is the best thing. And I think if you've got a developer that says, "Look, come and take a look, see what you think," I think there's no harm in doing that kind of thing. So yeah, I think we're completely aligned. I think watch out for things like Reading. I think in the UK, it needs to be something super compelling right now for people to jump on stuff. It's not a
Yeah,
market where people are scrambling over any old project. I think if it's outstanding, people are very, very positive on that, but it has to be. So yeah, I think be discerning where you invest in the UK. But yeah, I think looking at options like Phuket are definitely on people's radar these days.
I agree. And we'll put some details in the show notes and the description so people can find out more info, and we'll catch up in Phuket, I guess.
Yeah, we'll do the next one from the sauna, yeah?
Yeah, lovely. All right, John. Cheers.
Take care, mate. Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye bye.